Hi, and welcome to the e-learning series, It's Not Just Weather, Understanding Plan 2014. This is Part 6, Treaty of 1909 and the Conditions of Approval. The Boundary Waters Treaty was signed in 1909. It was signed to prevent and resolve disputes over the use of waters shared by Canada and the United States and to settle other transboundary issues. The treaty established the International Joint Commission to help the two countries carry out its provision. The treaty provided a framework to deal with these disputes. In Article 8 of the Boundary Water Treaty of 1909, it says the following order of precedence shall be observed among the various uses enumerated hereinafter for these waters, and no use shall be permitted which tends materially to conflict with or restrain any other use with the given preference over it in this order of precedence. Number 1, uses for domestic and sanitary purposes. Number 2, uses for navigation, including the service of canals for the purpose of navigation. And then 3, uses for power and for irrigation purposes. So this is the order of precedence that shall be observed. Continuing in Article 8, it reads, in cases involving the elevation of the natural levels of water on either side of the line as a result of the construction or maintenance on the other side of remedial or protective works or dams or other obstructions in boundary waters or in waters flowing therefrom or in waters below the boundary and rivers flowing across the boundary. That's a mouthful, lots of legalese there. The Commission shall require, as a condition of its approval thereof, that suitable and adequate provision approved by it be made for the protection and indemnity of all interests on the other side of the line which may be injured thereby. As a condition of its approval, that suitable and adequate provision provided by it be made for the protection and indemnity of all interests of the other side of the line which may be injured thereby. Now, this is a very confusing article when you think about Plan 2014, where it's actually clearly described in the plan that shoreline homeowners, municipalities, shoreline businesses will be injured. At this point, unfortunately, we still continue to only hear from the IJC about Lake Erie levels and snow and rain. However, the International Joint Commission updated the regulation plan, known as Plan 2014, which consists of technical rules on water releases at the Moser-Saunders Power Dam. There's also an updated supplementary order of approval on conditions regulating these outflows. Unfortunately, we never hear about these technical rules for water release. In the supplementary order of approval that was approved in December 2016, there is a condition, Condition A. In accordance with Article 8 of the 1909 Boundary Water Treaty, interests on either side of the international boundary that are injured by reason of the construction, maintenance, and operation of the works shall be given suitable and adequate protection and indemnity as provided by the laws in Canada or the Constitution and laws in the United States, respectively. The IJC is well aware that Plan 2014 will increase shoreline erosions and costs, but municipalities, businesses, and homeowners, where is that protection? Where is the indemnity? Condition D from the supplementary order says that works shall be designed, constructed, maintained, and operated so as to safeguard, so far as possible, the rights of all interests affected by the levels of the St. Lawrence River upstream from the Iroquois regulatory structure and by the levels of Lake Ontario and the lower Niagara River, and any change in levels resulting from the works which injuriously affects such rights shall be subject to the requirements of paragraph A relating to protections and indemnities. Again, municipalities, businesses, and homeowners, where is that protection and indemnity? Plan 2014 also has a bunch of criteria that must be satisfied, and it's extremely important that we go through each one, so please bear with me. Criteria H1. The outflow shall not increase the frequency of low levels of Montreal Harbour. Criteria H2 shall not increase the frequency of lower levels of Lake St. Louis. Criteria H3 shall not increase the frequency of high water on Lake St. Louis. H4, Lake Ontario shall not exceed the following elevations in the corresponding months. So there's a list of elevations there. Under H5, winter outflow and ice management, so criteria around management of ice. H6, the frequency of 246.3 feet and higher shall not be greater than past. Criteria H7, that the level shall not be lower than the following in the corresponding months. And there's a table that shows the lowest levels in those months. Criteria H8, consistent with other requirements, the outflow shall be regulated as to maintain levels necessary for navigation. So that criteria H8 is all about navigation. H9, consistent with other requirements, the maximum regulated outflow shall provide safe velocities for seaway navigation and minimize spill at the hydropower facilities. So that regulation again is about navigation and hydropower. H10, consistent with other requirements, the maximum regulated outflow shall be such as to secure the maximum dependable flow for power. So another criteria for hydropower. Criteria H11 is really all about us. Consistent with other requirements, the outflow shall be regulated for the benefit of property owners on the shores of Lake Ontario in the US and Canada, so as to reduce extremes of stage which have occurred under pre-project conditions and supplies of the past as adjusted on Lake Ontario. A similar criteria, H12, consistent with other requirements, the outflow shall be regulated to help restore ecosystem health by providing more natural variations to water. And 13, consistent with other requirements, the outflow shall be regulated so as to benefit recreational boating. So we have all of these criteria that cover all the stakeholders. We are managing to the benefit of the ecosystem, we're managing to the benefit of boating, to hydro, to shipping, and to shoreline owners. Most importantly is criteria H14. In the event that Lake Ontario water levels reach or exceed high levels, and those high levels are determined by Plan 2014, the works in the International Rapid Section shall be operated to provide all possible relief to the riparian owners upstream and downstream. In the event that Lake Ontario levels reach or fall below low levels, the works in the International Rapid Section shall be operated to provide all possible relief to municipal water intakes, navigation, and power purposes upstream and downstream. The high and low water levels at which this criterion applies and any revisions to these levels shall be subject to the concurrence of Canada and the United States and shall be set out in a commission directive to the board. Let's be clear. We already had a bunch of criteria that was specific to shipping, specific to hydro, specific to the environment, and specific to homeowners. In fact, H8 and H9 were specific to shipping. What this clearly states is that when we reach or exceed the high levels, that all possible relief to the riparian owners upstream and downstream shall be provided. This doesn't say unless there's going to be an impact to shipping, or unless there's going to be an impact to hydro, or unless there's going to be an impact to anyone else. Those were covered in H8 and H9 and the others. H14, criteria H14 stipulates that all possible relief to the riparian owners upstream and downstream, and this is not happening. There is no carve-out. However, there is a specific carve-out for low water level. The carve-out specifically for low water level, municipal water, navigation, power purposes, but there's no carve-out for high water. Yet we are operating consistently in violation of criteria H14. So in conclusion, it was known in advance that there would be increased damages to the shoreline. Where are the protections and indemnities outlined in the treaty and in the supplementary order of approval? And lastly, the IJC is operating Plan 2014 in apparent violation of criterion H14 and is not providing all possible relief to the riparian owners upstream and downstream. That concludes our Part 6. Up next, Part 7, the New York Senate hearing in 2018.